That's funny. Hopefully that didn't happen with Elizabeth.
It didn't. Welcome to back to the Power Lunch on LinkedIn Live. We're still at the Attune Conference in Serenbe, Georgia, in the Chattahoochee foothills. Really beautiful place to spend a weekend with in fellowship and in creating new relationships, and really working on our our own personal development. And I know for me, it's a real pleasure to sit down with Light Watkins. Light is has been teaching and practicing meditation since the late 90s. He travels the world giving talks on happiness and mindfulness and meditation. He's got 2 books out we're going to talk about today. But Light, thank you for sitting down with me.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
You know, we hear a lot about meditation and its benefits. And you're been teaching for a long time and worked with people, coached people for a long time. What are those benefits in your opinion? And what kind of, how do we get started? If you're thinking about meditation, you started reading maybe a little bit about it, and you think maybe it'll help me.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit, and where do you start? How do you get started? How do you find a teacher?
Wow.
So
we live in a great time right now. When I first started doing this in the 90s, meditation obviously was around, but
right.
It was in very niche communities, usually on the coasts, LA and New York, Hare Krishna communities, things like that.
Right.
Or you'd have to go to the library, remember the library, and find a book, the Tibetan Book of the Living and Dying, or some other kind of old spiritual text from Eastern philosophy. And fortunately for us today, there's been a lot of studies done on the benefits of meditation. So we can see that meditation has very powerful effects on the brain, on the body. I like to keep things very real world, practical, and accessible. So one of the real world benefits that I talk about a lot in my work is meditation's ability to restore rest in the body. And I bring that up because most of us in our modern day society are sleep deprived. We're not resting
Indeed.
to the degree that our bodies need in order to do all the wonderful things that they're designed to do, such as digest our food, reproduce, balance hormones, ward off infectious diseases. And what we're seeing in hospitals and in the medical community are all of the illnesses and diseases that are a result of lifestyle and sedentary behaviors.
Right.
And those are directly related to stress, which is something that happens when the body is not able to achieve deep states of rest. So, long story short, when you meditate on a consistent basis, it will bring rest back to the body, and the rest will do all of the wonderful things for you, right? So, and it's like dominoes from there. Your digestive system comes back online, your immune system comes back online, et cetera, et cetera. As far as how you get started, how you find a teacher, I'm a big proponent of teachers. Meditation is not, it's an art as well as a science.
Mm-hmm.
And if you learn how to do it properly, how to operate in concert with your thinking mind, then you can optimize the experience dramatically over what you would be able to do on your own, because there's nothing arbitrary about meditation. From the way you sit, the times of day you do it, the way you handle certain thoughts and not other thoughts. And then there's this whole thing with mantras and yantras and all these other supplementary tools that you can incorporate in your practice, intentions and visualizations and breath and otherwise. So each one of those has a certain effect, and you need to understand what those effects are. And if you don't, you might end up just kind of standing in your own way and making the practice harder than what it needs to be. And that's what I hear from a lot of people who haven't been properly trained, is that my mind is too busy, my body's too fidgety, I can't do it, I've tried, it's painful.
Right.
Those are all symptoms of just not understanding what you're doing well enough. And one of the metaphors that I like to compare it to is swimming. Right?
Okay.
Swimming is something that. That's all right. Swimming is something that everybody can do with 2 arms and 2 legs.
Right,
And even if
right.
you don't have 2 arms and 2 legs, you can still make it work if you know the hydrodynamics of
Right.
water and how to
Learn how to
move
use your
your
body.
arms and
Right.
legs and how to breathe and torque and lengthen and all of those mechanics. And it applies to everybody across the board. Doesn't matter where you're from. Doesn't matter how many degrees you have. It doesn't matter, if you're big or skinny. If you move your arms and your legs in this way, you will glide across the water. And the same thing is true for meditation. If you operate in this way with your mind, with your body, then you will move from the surface mind, which is the busy mind that everybody complains about, to a very deep state of awareness, which is where you essentially lose the awareness that you're meditating. And that's what everybody relishes in the practice. And it's not something that you need to believe in or have faith in any more than you need to believe in your ability to swim. You just need to move your arms and legs in that way, and you will start swimming. And then if someone tries to tell you, no, swimming is actually a process of, walking on water, you don't have to get into debates and arguing with them. You know how to swim. You've had the direct experience of it. And then so at that point, it becomes a process of doing less to accomplish more. How do I move more efficiently so I can glide faster and easier and more effortless? And so that presents levels to the process, and meditation has its own levels where you start off with just the basic stroke, and then eventually you may work up to the breaststroke version of meditation, which is what a lot of people considered to be classical meditation, which is sitting with the back straight, the legs crossed, with the hands together like that. It's very difficult for a beginner to sit like that and find some sense of solace in their practice. It's like a beginner trying to learn how to swim by doing the breaststroke, the
Right.
most difficult stroke in all of swimming.
Right.
It's not that it means you can't swim, it just means you're trying to start at the expert level, and you need to start at the beginner level. So that's why I wrote the book that I wrote, my last book, Bliss More, How to Succeed in Meditation Without Really Trying. The purpose was to help people like you and I, people who are regular people. You're not monks, we don't live in caves, we have
Right.
jobs, we have responsibilities, we have
Stresses, everything.
relationships, all demands. To show people like that what those basic mechanics are so that they can start using them today in their living room, in the passenger seat of their car, on the flight, on the Uber, at the music festival, wherever they are, how to drop into a place of meditation that makes you start to crave the practice. And once you start craving it, then it's easy to become a habit and a daily experience.
Are there different types for different people?
Yes, but you only need to know about 2 broad categories. And
Okay.
those categories are monastic types and regular people types.
Okay.
Okay? So the monastic types are the ones you see on
Okay.
all the images online of the back straight, the robe, the shaved head. That's monastic types. And those are the more rigid, austere types of meditation.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that someone who's a normal, regular person can't do that. You can absolutely do it, but in order to accelerate at that particular practice, eventually you're probably going to have to adopt the same lifestyle as the other people who are really enjoying that practice and have adopted in their life, which is you're going to be wearing a robe at some point, and you're going to have to shave all your hair off at some point, right? So if
For
you
some of us, that'd be traumatic.
that'd be traumatic. Right. So people always ask me, how do I know what the best type is? Go to the place where they're teaching this type of meditation. Look around the room. You find the people who are enjoying it the most, people who have dedicated to it and committed to it. How are they dressed? What is their lifestyle? If that lifestyle and dress looks like you and matches where you see yourself going in life, that's where that practice is going. If you walk into a room and you see everyone is dressed like you and they have, the kind of lifestyle that you admire and want to have, then you know that that's where that practice is going, right? And it's that simple. So just find the people, the enthusiasts, and you'll know if that's a practice for you or not.
Okay. And so many things are moving online. Let's say you live in a place where there aren't as many options,
Yes.
and you want to explore and find the right practice or the right group for you. Can it be done online?
So technically, you can learn the mechanics online in the same way that
Like
you
like
could read a book on swimming.
like the what is the bicycle thing
Yeah,
that
Peloton.
Peloton is there something like that you can do now?
But the problem with Peloton is that the instructor can't see you.
Okay.
So when I'm teaching somebody and we're all in the same room together, I can look around and I can tell exactly what you're experiencing
Okay.
just based on what your body posture is like.
So
I
is
could
the
tell
energy
if you're
you can
straining, I could tell if you're relaxing into it,
okay.
and then when you give me feedback about your experience, I can give you refinements quickly based on the verbiage you use, the descriptions you use of how you were integrating and navigating with your thoughts. And so that process is historically what's necessary for mastering the practice. And that's the standard by which I recommend that everybody seek out is mastery, right? And that's why you have seekers. Historically, throughout the last 1,000 years, people have gone on a journey. So if you have to leave your apartment, if it's important enough to you to have that experience, you're going to have to leave your apartment at some point and go on a journey like everybody else. You're not exempt from the journey. But
That's the fun part.
the good news is you don't have to go to India anymore, right?
Right.
Before 50, 60 years ago, you had to get a ticket to India. Now you just got to go to LA or to New York or to Chicago or some other major city. If in most major cities in most Western countries, you're going to find someone that's like me, someone who's would be considered an expert in teaching people how to become self-sufficient as a meditator.
Okay.
And so the practice that I teach is called Vedic Meditation, Vedic meditation. The
Okay.
book that I mentioned earlier, Bliss More, is a watered down version of the mechanics that I teach in Vedic meditation. So if you read the book, you didn't learn Vedic meditation, you learned some of the mechanics. But here's the thing, and you know this as a writer, when you write a book on something technical, the last thing the publisher wants is a technical book.
Right.
They want a book that
They don't.
somebody can read from a flight from LA to New York, 5-6 hours
Yep.
max, right? They don't want the person putting it down. They don't want them practicing anything.
Right.
You have to be able to read it straight through.
That's right.
So I learned that the hard way, because when they told me I want you to write a book on meditation, I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm going to write the book like in the same way that I teach my trainings, which is over multiple days, lots of practice, lots of integration, and that was my first manuscript. And I said, no. You gotta
Start over.
you gotta start over, and you just gotta write things straight through. We don't want people to be able to meditate. We want them to read how meditation works,
Okay.
with a lot of stories in between and anecdotes. So that's what I ended up turning.
We want to
in.
pique their interest.
Right. We want to pique their interest in meditation.
But we don't want a how-to manual.
And that's essentially how all the books work. I'm not
Right.
unique in that sense.
Right.
They understand their business and that people want to read a book straight through. They want a page turner. They don't want to feel like they're reading some manual. And in order to properly teach someone through a book, it needs to incorporate a lot of exercises and practice and feedback, and that's just not possible with a book. So that's why
Right.
a lot of meditation teachers will swear that people can't learn properly from a book. It doesn't mean you can't learn at all. You can learn basic mechanics, but if you really want to master something, you're going to have to ultimately graduate from a book or an app or a video or
Right.
something online and go and find a teacher. And fortunately now there's so many teachers, you can find a teacher without having to pay a whole lot of money to do that.
What I like about the teaching, though, there are a couple, going to a class are two things for me. One, there's a lot of energy in doing it
Right.
with collective, like with a group.
Right.
Number one. Number two for me, there's a little accountability in there.
Absolutely. That's what you're basically
You know.
buying into is
Right.
the accountability component.
It's a trick. It's to trick me into going.
Right.
Right? That's why you buy. That's why I buy a gym membership, right?
Yeah.
It's to say, okay, I can't waste that.
Right.
I'm just tricking my mind to say, hey, you got to go and do your 30-minute cardio, or you've got to go do
Right.
your workout because, and so, but I do like that accountability part, and I think that's
Absolutely.
but the energy for me is the most the more important reason,
Right.
and that.
But the energy is created, and the accountability is created through just showing up and doing whatever you have to do to show up.
Right. Right.
Because if the teacher came to your living room and sat there for free, came to your living room
Right.
and just sat there, you probably wouldn't pay them two dimes of attention.
No,
You know,
probably not.
it's you going to them and sacrificing whatever you have to sacrifice to get to them, and the time you have to take off of work and all those other little things that makes you curious about what they have to say and makes you pay attention. And at the same time, because you've come along that way and they've probably put a couple of hoops for you to jump through in order to get into that room, whether it's cost or silence or some sacrifice, you have their full attention as well. Because good teachers want to work with good students, worthy students, people who have made the sacrifice, who've opened up their curiosity level to be able to not just receive the information, but also to integrate the information and to practice, to put it into practice. There's nothing worse as a teacher than teaching someone who doesn't want to be in the room.
That's a great segue into my next question. What state of mind do you really need to be in to get the most out of meditation? Like, where do you need to be? Like, aside from wanting to do it or thinking, okay, maybe I should try this as a way to help me feel better, get the rest I need, grow grow whatever capacity I want to grow in. But for it to be the most effective, where do I need to be?
You just have to be curious enough to follow the instructions. And that's one of the reasons, this whole idea of gurus gets kind of a bad rap in the Western society, because then people equate that with worship. You're worshiping
Right.
this person who's a human who's probably trying to sleep with all the women and doing all these drugs or whatever they're imagining the guru is doing, and asking you for all your money. And really, anyone who's a legitimate guru has transcended the worldly desire for more money. Like, you don't get into the guru business to become wealthy.
Right.
Or a lot of times the reason why they ask you for things to make sacrifices with time and money is so that you can open up your consciousness so that you can then receive the information. Because otherwise, if you refuse to say, let's say a teacher was going to charge you $1,000 to come and sit in the room with them for 5 days and teach you how to meditate, and you're saying, no, I don't, that's too much money. What you're essentially saying is that whatever that person can teach me is not worth whatever I can buy with $1,000.
Right.
And that teacher doesn't want to teach you because they know they're not going to have your full attention. Because you're going to be sitting there thinking, I could be on a trip to, Aspen, Colorado, or I could, go buy that purse that I really like, right?
Right.
But
You're not serious.
you're not serious, so you're not going to follow the instructions. That's
Right.
how they can test you. If you're going to be someone who will follow instructions, if you're going to humble yourself as a student to then accept the teacher role. So then the dynamic is set for learning to take place. Otherwise, you're essentially saying, I'm the teacher, right? And the teacher's the student. I'm going to dictate how this works.
I'm a powerful CEO. You're just teaching meditation.
Yeah. And
You don't want that. That's
and you don't
awful
deserve,
dynamic.
You don't deserve this thing that you're asking
Right.
for. So now I've elevated myself to the teacher role. So the teacher's going to say, okay, well then, that's okay. We don't have to work together.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck with all of that, with your $1,000. And so it's a very subtle thing, but for those who, when I was first propositioned by my teacher, he was teaching people meditation, and he was charging them a week's salary. So he
Okay.
didn't even put a number on it. He just said, it's whatever you earn in a week.
Okay.
And I thought that was so interesting.
That's brilliant, actually.
I thought that was so
I love
interesting.
that.
Because then, at the time, I wasn't even earning any money. I was
Okay.
living off of savings. I was trying to start a career as a yoga teacher. But I found it fascinating because then the onus was on me to essentially state to the universe what I felt like my earning potential was.
Yeah.
So I ended up cobbling together, I think it was $400 in cash, which was way more than I thought that I was able to earn at that time. I was a brand new yoga teacher. But it was a very powerful lesson for me in giving slightly more than I thought that I could afford. And that, again, that opened me up to pay attention and to follow the instructions to a T and to get the most out of the experience. And looking back now, 20 years later, it was the best $400 I've ever spent in my entire life. Right?
I bet.
I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if I hadn't spent that $400.
So it led
And-
you on a whole nother life path.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so, I like that part of teaching because you give people an opportunity to step up and to participate willingly in that circuit, that exchange, which is really for their benefit. It's not really for mine. It's not, your $500 is not going to make or break my
Right.
business. I really don't care about it, right? I'm not driven by money. If you're making a big deal out of it, you're driven by money. That's really the issue.
Right.
It's not my issue, it's your issue. And some people can see that and they make adjustments, some people can't, which to me means they're not ready yet. And when they're ready, then they come in. So I only really work with people who are ready, and that's the kind of screen, that's the filter. And it's not just meditation, it's anything. There's always an exchange with anything that you attempt to extract something of value from. And if someone says this is free or whatever, that means that the exchange is coming later.
Right.
And
It's coming.
You don't know what it is. So what I like to do is I like to propose what the exchange is on the front end. So then that way I don't have to be surprised by the exchange that's coming later on the back end. When you
Right.
understand how the law works, you always want to work out what the exchange is on the front end. Because
That's,
you may not be willing to pay that exchange
That's good business advice.
on the back end. No, it's true. It's
very good.
absolutely true.
It's very good business advice.
Doesn't matter what it is.
I like the way you put it too. The exchange,
Right.
because that's
It's
what
an
it
exchange.
is.
I say the most expensive meditation is free meditation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're not going to be willing to pay that exchange on the back end. Someone's going to sit there and teach you for free. Get ready.
Because it's coming, right?
You're going to be indebted, and you have to do it whatever they tell you to do. And if you don't do it, you're going to feel guilty.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how much is that worth, right? Wouldn't you rather just get it out of the way in the front end, and then that way you can be free to come and go as you please?
Yeah, it's probably a good policy. How we talk about happiness a lot. I see so many people write about happiness, and to me, we struggle. I kind of struggle with that whole idea of seeking happiness,
Mm-hmm.
because I think we should focus on contentment
Mm-hmm.
to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you lived in happiness if I was just happy all the time,
Mm-hmm.
you're missing so many other emotions, and I just don't think that that's really possible. I think it's true that you can
Mm-hmm.
be happy. And what's your thought on that? How do you get to the point where you're content?
I really love that distinction that you made, because that's exactly how I define happiness.
Is it? Okay.
It's the state of supreme contentedness. Because I think you're right. There's no one walking around with a big smile plastered on their face 24/7. If they did, they would probably be in a mental institution somewhere.
That's right.
But it's that state. It's really the state of needing nothing, which is what contentedness truly is. You reach a point where you feel like it's not that you lose your preferences for things. Like I prefer to have a really wonderful meal tonight.
Mm-hmm.
But if I have a crappy meal, it's not going to ruin my whole week,
Right.
right? It may ruin the hour or so that I'm sitting there eating dinner. May not be the highlight of my day.
Not the high. That's the way you frame it, though, right?
It's
not the highlight of my
day.
It
but
could have been the highlight of my day.
It could have been the highlight of my day.
Just
but
wasn't.
It wasn't. And so But you know, there's some purpose behind it. I don't know what it is. I don't care what it is. I just know that there's a purpose behind it. And so what that contentedness does is it frees you up to stay available to whatever other opportunities are going to be happening during that meal and after that meal. And if we're locked into what coulda, shoulda, woulda happened because we're not content, and that's really the opposite of happiness is discontent. I wish this was happening, you know, whatever, anything other than what I'm currently experiencing was happening. It closes you off. It closes you off to the present moment, which is where all the richest information can be sourced about what's going to happen next and what opportunities are available next.
How do you think we get to that? Because I mean, to me, it just seems like we're living in this extremely stressful world. And I don't know if that's something that we put on ourselves, or is it the news and the politics and our lives are busier than they used to be. I think and we've got to we're connected to our cell phones and we're connected to social media, and we're just it's this constant buzz and churn.
Right.
How do we quiet that? Because that's and get to that place of contentment.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially the essence of meditation. That's when I say
So it can
meditation,
do that
it's
for
like,
you. It can do that for you.
Yeah, when I say meditation is like going to the gym for your mind, right? What's the outcome of working out your mind? It increases your ability to have perspective.
Okay.
And that's really the one thing you can manage is your perspective on whatever's happening around. You can't control whatever's happening around you. You can't control the quality of the meal. You can't control what your partner does or doesn't do
Right.
on a daily basis, but you can control your perspective. I mean, in other words, what does this mean for me? What am I associating this with that's making it good or bad or whatever? And meditation will help to break down old conditioning, old associations that are no longer relevant for whatever's happening in the present moment. A lot of people are still relating to their partners and to their friends and to themselves in the same way that they've been relating to them since they were 6 and 7 years old.
So it's part of that conditioning that we have.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Because it's become hardwired, because it's been reinforced so frequently throughout all these moments in life that people haven't been able to adapt to sufficiently. And so when you meditate, your brain, one of the ways that it changes is it breaks down that old conditioning, which makes you available to new associations. And then when you go back into life after meditation, you may find that you're less triggered, um, you're less reactive to demands and pressures that are placed upon you, and you're more responsive and you're more adaptable to those demands. Which again, the golden opportunity is to stay in the present moment. That's where we want to be as much as possible. But you can't be present by thinking about being present, because that takes you out of the present moment. So
Okay.
present moment awareness is a symptom
Makes
of
sense.
supreme adaptability, right? So the more adaptable you are, the more present you are. How do you know? Because the time is going by faster than when you're miserable, when you're suffering. Time never goes by slower than when you're suffering.
Right.
And time doesn't go by faster than when you're experiencing love, connection, happiness, right? Time flies when you're having fun. So that's kind of how you know when the extent to which it's happening. Now, there are also, again, degrees to all of this. Some people are born into a baseline level of happiness that's higher than someone else. And so you can't compare yourself to what your friend or your partner is
Right.
experiencing. If they're always optimistic and you're always pessimistic, it doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. It's just where your baseline level of happiness is. What we do know is that, as you pointed out, there's nothing that's going to happen in the future that's going to raise that baseline level of happiness. Situationally speaking, you can make all the money in the world, you can be around all the sexiest people in the world. If you're not happy now, you're not going to be happy then. You may get a temporary wave of joy, but then you're going to settle back down into your baseline.
Right.
The things that raise the baseline are your inner state. So gratitude, volunteer work, feeling connected to others, and these kinds of things. what helps you be able to do all of that? Exercise, go to a therapist, do all the things you need to do to increase your inner state. Meditation. So meditation is like a key habit. It's the lead domino. Once you get that going, all the other things come back online.
Well, then it opens you up to where maybe counseling can be effective.
Correct.
To
And it makes you aware that, hey, I need this kind of counseling instead of that kind of counseling.
right,
Right.
because you've thought about it during your meditation.
Or just, you just
You
feel it. You just
feel
feel
it.
it. You hear it. You hear possibilities before you needed to go and run back and get everybody's opinion about it. But now
Right.
the one that's for you, it just sensually stands out above the others. And you don't even know why.
Right.
It just does. And there's a charm around it. And it could be the weirdest, most bizarre thing in the world. But you say yes to it, right? And you go to that thing. You go to one session. The guy is the weirdest person you ever met in your life. You decide, I'm not going back to that anymore. You walk out of the door. You bump into someone, your old friend, says, hey, what's
Yeah.
just happened? Oh, I just came from this weird thing. This guy tried to sexually assault me. Oh, well, you got to come to my other. This is the one you need to see.
Right.
But you wouldn't have had that exchange
hadn't gone.
had you not gone to this guy, right? So you really have to default to listening to what's happening inside of you. That's your GPS. Other
Yeah.
people are really only advising you based on their GPS.
And that's millions of years of evolution, right? That you have to learn to get back in touch with,
Yeah.
right? And listen
The
to.
still small voice, they call it in
Yeah.
in Christianity. Yeah. And the more we ignore it, the quieter it becomes.
Right.
The more we follow it, the louder it gets. So that's really the game, and that's why whether it's a bad meal or an inappropriate comment, all these things are operating for us on purpose, and it's guiding us and navigating us to our best life, whatever that looks like.
Do you have any stories or a story of someone's life that it transformed, aside from yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I have tons of stories. Just a couple of small things I can think of off the top of my head. There was a woman in her 20s that I taught who came to learn how to meditate. And I tell people in my book, because this is an important point, the stories that I highlight in the book about all these amazing things that happen to people, these are people I work with personally. These are not people who read the book
Right.
and then they had this amazing transformation. I'm not saying it's not possible, but there's definitely a qualitative difference when you work with someone in person. So
Right.
this particular person, she reported after a month of meditating, she says that 29 years of bad tasting nail polish and therapy. I start meditating, and after 2 weeks, I stop biting my nails. Right? So it's a little thing, but it's a big symptom. It's a symptom of a bigger thing inside, that anxiety, that worry.
Right.
And so she was treating the symptom, right? Bad tasting nail polish. If I put bad tasting nail polish on my nails, then I'll stop biting them, right?
Right.
If I go talk to somebody about biting my nails,
Yeah.
then I'll stop biting them.
Right.
And she didn't realize that biting her nails was really a symptom of a bigger problem, which was just a lot of stress inside of her body. And when meditation created this release valve for the stress, her body was no longer behaving like a pressure cooker, which was making her bite her nails and sweat in her palms and these other things. And then it just went away. And I've got 1,000 stories like that of people who were treating symptoms such as insomnia. I love teaching insomniacs because they are the most skeptical people in the world. They tried everything,
Right.
and they have all these doubts around themselves. And so when they start meditating in the way that I teach them, and it starts to allow them to get quality sleep, literally overnight, no pun intended, they become the biggest fans of meditation. And then everybody starts to listen to them because they know that they've struggled with sleep deprivation. So I've seen that happen a lot. I've had a woman with addicted to cigarettes start meditating. She loses the addiction to cigarettes with no kind of nicotine patches or any of those kinds of things. again, it's when you lose the dependency or the stress that's allowing you to be dependent on those things, it falls away. One of the more bizarre things, I taught a woman in New York City who had been mugged on the Williamsburg Bridge at night. For those people who've never been to New York, the Williamsburg Bridge connects Manhattan with Brooklyn, the part of
Right.
Brooklyn that's now the trendy
Right.
Williamsburg area.
Right.
And this is a bridge that she walked across every day, multiple times a day in some cases. And she got attacked there one night, walking back home from work in Manhattan. And her body would stop her every time she tried to walk across the bridge after the mugging. So she would have to go out of her way and catch this train and connect to another train and, you know, make her way home every day or take a cab. And it just got really cumbersome and expensive. And this went on for about 3 years. And she started meditating. I met her about a year after she got mugged. And she never mentioned to me that she had been mugged or anything like that. But she said one day, about 2 years after she had started meditating, she found herself in the middle of the Williamsburg Bridge. And she said she didn't even realize that she was doing it. She just did it like she always did it, right?
Right.
And for some reason, the blockage that she was experiencing for those years just cleared
Evaporated.
up, right? And that's essentially how it happens. It's not something that you have to force, control, manage. It just goes away. When the stress goes away, your potential opens up. So your body already knows how to sleep. It already knows how to digest the food. It already knows how to keep the skin tight. All you have to do is give the body what it needs, which is what you do when you sit down and meditate. You give the body the biochemicals from the meditation.
Right.
And then everything else just blossoms like a flower.
That's incredible. Well, Light, thank you, man.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I enjoyed the
And
questions.
it's been a lot of fun, and I think for me, really informative, because I know that a lot of busy people, and I mean, we're on LinkedIn, we're on a business show, are, don't have a lot of time. But to me, this is if you're going to take some time out to work the physical part of your body, this is an essential aspect of that.
Yeah, and it refunds you back the time you put into it. Just like that
There-
girl
I
on
mean,
the
that-
bridge, she's spending an extra hour trying to get home. She starts meditating. Now she cuts the commute down in half. She has a more beautiful commute,
Right.
right? And she gets exercise in the process.
Right.
So yeah, she got the time refunded back to her.
I love the way you put that. It will come back to you
Right.
if you
Yeah.
put the energy into that aspect of it.
Yeah.
That's a great lead. Question I ask everybody at the end of the show is, what's the best advice you ever got, and who gave it to you?
The first thing that comes to mind is my dad. He would always say, "You get what you inspect, not what you expect."
Expect.
I don't know if he coined it or if he read it somewhere, or if it's a common thing, but that has come in very handy in my adult life, especially as an entrepreneur and running businesses. You get what you inspect, not what you expect.
Indeed. So, how can somebody sign up for one of your workshops?
They can find me Light Watkins, LIGHTWATKINS,
Okay.
all over on internet, on social media. Just
Okay.
go to Light Watkins, at Light Watkins, lightwatkins.com.
Okay.
Light@lightwatkins.com is my email.
And you have a new schedule coming up. Maybe you're going to do another workshop this
I do
year.
workshops all the time between Los Angeles, New York, and London. And
Okay.
I also do international retreats, and I'm working on another book, so they can get the book that I wrote on Amazon or wherever they sell books.
Now, how long are the workshops?
4 days.
4 days.
4 days. But
Pretty
about
intensive?
2 hours a day over 4 days.
Okay.
So not that intensive, but very comprehensive.
Now, that's good. I mean, it's a good way to get on the path of learning.
Yeah,
right?
because I give you lots of time to practice and to integrate so that by the end of the 4 days, you are a self-sufficient meditator. You've taken all the guesswork out of the practice and you feel like you can really do it no matter where you are.
Okay. Thank you for spending some time with us today here at Attune and the beautiful foothills, Chattahoochee foothills of Georgia. We're going to be back. We've got some more programming later tonight and this afternoon. But until then, thank you for spending a little time with us.